Thank you for tuning in to the Alliance Blog Podcast, a presentation of Alliance-Wrestling.com, your number one source of news and information for the National Wrestling Alliance and the United Wrestling Network. And, well, it's been a long 365 days, guys, but we got some good news yesterday. We got some really good news. It seemed like the information was leaking out from everywhere, whether it be from FITE TV posting about the pay-per-view that is set to happen in just a few weeks, or if it was from the Associated Press doing interviews with Billy Corgan talking about the NWA returning to prominence, returning to pay-per-view, returning to power. 365 days, guys. And, you know, I hate to be the one to say I told you so, but that was me laughing. I told you so. Now, I'm going to warn you guys. The audio that you're going to hear following the commercial break is from the pre-party. That's the live stream we do every Tuesday where we talk to you, the NWA fans, hashtag NWA fam, and we talk about what's going on with the National Wrestling Alliance. We've been doing that every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 o'clock Pacific for, well, since the advent of NWA Power. It's going to be nice to go back to doing that when there's actual wrestling to talk about. But, well, we talked just last Tuesday, just yesterday, and it got pretty riled up there. You might want to turn the volume down, the audio down on your podcast, because it's going to get pretty loud. You can turn it back up, but turn it down. All right, guys, stay tuned for more after this. The NWA is back! We've been waiting for this for so long, guys. The NWA, over 365 days since their last live wrestling event, and they're back March 21st. FITE TV, 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 o'clock Eastern Time. The National Wrestling Alliance returns. Holy crap, I'm excited. How about you? How about you? We've been sitting here waiting and waiting for the return of the National Wrestling Alliance, to see the 10 pounds of gold defended on television, on pay-per-view, to see the return of Thomas Latimer and Camille, to see Trevor Murdoch defend his National Heavyweight Championship, to see the Pope Elijah Burke defend the NWA television title, to see Serena Deeb defend that World Women's Championship in an NWA ring. Something she hasn't even been able to do yet. Guys, I am so fired up. I am pumped up. I'm just completely fired up. I hope you guys are too. Or I guess this week, Saturday morning, that's when most of us discovered that the YouTube channel for the National Wrestling Alliance had been completely wiped clean. Now, a lot of people were theorizing why this was happening, and I know this is kind of late news, but let's go ahead and talk about it, right? Let's talk about why they stripped all the content off of YouTube and what that could potentially mean down the road. Well, the first things first is apparently the National Wrestling Alliance has something worked out. Apparently that there's more to this return to action than just the pay-per-view. Because this deal that they have with FITE TV, which is going to, again, kick off on March the 21st with the first pay-per-view, they will also be on that channel, on FITE TV, come March 23rd, that Tuesday following. So, again, this is really, really cool. It's very, very exciting, and I'm glad a lot of you guys are here to check it out. But going back to that, there was so much speculation what was going to happen. Some people were already just throwing the NWA in the cellar. It's done. It's over. It's dead. That wasn't the case, clearly. Some people thought that McMahon had bought the NWA. I even went so far as to check recent stock transactions from the WWE front office to see if anyone might have sold some stock to make a large purchase. Nothing happened. There was no movement in the stocks whatsoever. Nothing happening. And then, of course, we get this announcement. I got to give credit to where credit is due. Our friends over at want to make sure I say the name right. The Put You Over podcast, Stanley Streamer, and of course even our own Dave Scooby pointed this out on the NWA Discord for This Is the Pro Wrestling Podcast. We actually just started up our Discord channel as well, the Alliance blog, but This Is Pro Wrestling Podcast has had their Discord up for a while, and both those gentlemen pointed out that the NWA has returned, that the FITE TV pay-per-view was coming out. They actually notified me that was coming up. So again, really good news. This is all just it's kind of crazy because we went for weeks and months without anything, and you know, Gary Horn was telling you to just be patient. I was telling you to just be patient, just to hang out, just to wait, because I was confident that the NWA was returning. But you know, FITE TV, March 21st, the NWA is back for the attack. It's the first pay-per-view event of 2021 for the NWA. The first pay-per-view since Hard Times back in January of 2020, if you could believe it. And the event's going to feature the world's heavyweight champion Nick Aldis, the NWA stars Thunder Rosa, Aaron Stevens, Trevor Murdoch, Elijah Burke, Tim Storm, Camille, and many more. I would venture to guess that JR Kratos will be there with Aaron Stevens defending the NWA tag team titles. I mean, that's not written anywhere, but I would assume that. I assume Tom Latimer will be there. I assume that Tim Storm would be on this event. But I mean, it's really kind of exciting. I mean, all of you guys are feeling the same way I am. You're all happy to be seeing that the NWA is here and the NWA is creating content once again. But there are going to be some things that'll be different. Obviously, the roster is going to look different. Even the way that we watch the show is going to be different. It won't be on YouTube anymore. NWA Power will not be on YouTube. I mean, at least initially, we don't really know all the specifics, and they're trickling out. We hear more and more stuff, but let me tell you why they got off of YouTube, because it's very, very simple and easy to understand. The NWA, at best, was maybe making $1,000 an episode of Power. Now, you know, you and I, $1,000 means a lot of money. I mean, if someone wanted to hand me $1,000 for producing this podcast, I'd be more than happy to take it. But when you talk about professional wrestling, it's not a cheap endeavor. And I've talked to a few industry insiders, not connected to the National Wrestling Alliance, but people who are in the know, and telling me that with the amount of views based on the YouTube algorithm and how much money these wrestling shows will generate, they were lucky to get between $800 and $1,000 per episode, and that's with over 100,000 views on these videos. It's not the same as an influencer or say like an NBC sitcom or something like that. Wrestling is a hard sell, not just in the world of television, but also in the world of digital marketing and streaming and all of that. It's hard to make money on basic, just pure advertising. So, in order for the NWA to make money or to even break even, you got to remember when they were doing live events, the live television tapings, there was an admission charge, right? You could pay general admission $20 to get in. That's reasonable for every fan. But $100 usually was the price for the VIP tickets, which would allow you the opportunity to engage with the talent one-on-one. They were able to sell you merchandise in person. And again, those VIP experiences lent a lot more financial stability for the NWA. They were able to break even on some of their production costs associated with producing this event, producing these shows, based on what they did at the live gates. Now remember, televised wrestling has always been about an infomercial. It's a commercial. Televised wrestling is supposed to get you, the consumer, into the arena. Now, obviously, with the way things are right now, with a global pandemic, with COVID-19, that's not accessible. We won't be able to attend, these NWA television tapings. We won't be able to attend the pay-per-view. So they have to make their money back somehow. And like I said, one of the industry insiders I spoke to told me on the low end, on their humble budget, they were spending about $10,000 an episode to produce their content. Basically $10,000 for 1 hour of content. Now, that's not just wrestling talent, but that's camera operators, that's the directors, the people responsible for lighting, and then there's ancillary costs too that the NWA would have to face, like renting out the venue. Georgia Public Broadcasting Studios is not a cheap place. If anyone's ever been there, it's a beautiful building. It's a beautiful studio. That wasn't cheap at all. What you saw on TV is almost exactly what you saw when you got there. Very high end, very bougie, very, very first class. So again, there's all these expenses associated with it. The NWA at the time didn't even own a ring. They were renting their ring. So I mean, again, all these associated costs to do business. They had to figure out something, and YouTube wasn't cutting it. Now, I'm not sure what FITE TV is promising them. I don't know how much money they can actually make from being on FITE TV. There is a lot of speculation. I saw reports. I don't know if any of it has been officially announced by the NWA, but there will have a monthly subscription to watch NWA Power. Now, the number I'm hearing is $4.99. That breaks down to basically $1.25 a program. And if you want to break it down further, each NWA Power episode is comprised of like 3 to 4 matches. So we're really talking about 30 cents a match. Now, I understand for a lot of people that's going to be out of their price range right now. But I think more for most people, I think that's adequate. I think that's fair. I don't think we're charging too much. And since the advent of the modern day National Wrestling Alliance, since Billy Corgan purchased the NWA, I started doing the math, and in that 3 years since 2017, October 2017, when the NWA took over, they have produced nearly 25 hours of actual wrestling content from October 2019 to March 2020. That's not including all the 10 pounds of gold. That's just the episodes of NWA Power and NWA Shockwave. Or no, I'm not even Shockwave. That's just NWA Power. So about 25 hours of content, right? Now that isn't saying much considering that we've been involved with a global pandemic and all that. It's pretty good, to be honest. I mean, for anyone else, 20 hours seems very low, but considering the circumstances, for about 3 or 4 months, they created 25 hours of content. Now, you take that into consideration, and knowing that they commissioned their 70th anniversary show that was 3.5 hours long that they filmed in 2018, they gave that to you live on YouTube during the middle of the global pandemic. They also gave you the Crockett Cup 2019 for 2.5 hours for free. No charge. And, along with that, they efforted to make other content that was kind of hit or miss. That's a lot of free entertainment value. And if you chose, you could go on to pay, God forbid you have to pay for their pay-per-views that they offered in 2019, which was Into the Fire, Hard Times, and then that the New Year's special that they did back in January of 2019. And I'd say that's a pretty sweet deal. They only asked you to pay for about 7.5 hours worth of content over the course of 2 years. And you were giving countless hours of content and never even asked to pay for it. So I think if you undervalue what the NWA is doing, I think that says more about you as a person than the NWA. And I think now when they've come to this point where they are able to, offset some of their costs, put some of their production costs onto the consumer to ensure that we continue to get content. I mean, I'm looking forward to paying for it. I'm looking forward to being invested in this. I mean, between FITE TV and between the pay-per-views, I think there's a lot of opportunity for the fans to get some really unique content. What are your guys' thoughts? Is $4.99 too much for you? And if $4.99 is too much for you, what would be reasonable? Because we do know that unceremoniously, Primetime Live featured about 5 title matches and in total about 7 matches in all for the NWA. And of those matches, All the NWA content from Primetime Live was produced as NWA Shockwave, and those videos were receiving up to 100,000 views. Some of them even more than that. And I guarantee you, I mean, those were all free. I guarantee you Dave Marquez wasn't getting 100,000 views on his weekly pay-per-view. So there's obviously an audience there that wants the content but are unwilling to pay for it. So what is your opinion? What are you willing to pay for content? They even made some of those pay-per-views free for us. You know, if you never saw Crockett Cup, you never saw the 70th anniversary show, you were late to the party. Let's say your introduction to the NWA was NWA Power. They put so much free content out there. I really think that was, beyond fair. $5 to me is not a lot of money. That to me. But I know some of you aren't in the same situation. You don't have that same luxury. And it is a luxury. I mean, we are in the middle of a global pandemic. More and more people are unemployed now than they were 2 years ago. I get how this could be a struggle, which should entitle you to 4 episodes. The formula was a weekly episodic television, so I would assume that's still the same plan. They're still calling it NWA Power, so I would assume that it's still going to be a fresh episode every week. Here's the press release that I received about the new show. I'll just go ahead and read it. The NWA World's Heavyweight Champion Nick Aldis will appear, as well as the NWA stars Thunder Rosa, Aaron Stevens, Trevor Murdoch, Elijah Burke, Tim Storm, Camille, and many more in the historic promotion's first event since the onset of the pandemic. March 2nd, 2021, New York. FITE, the premier global digital platform for sports and entertainment, announced today that the National Wrestling Alliance will return on March 21st at 4 p.m. Eastern with a live pay-per-view event, relaunching the promotion since it went on hiatus due to global pandemic. Following the Back to Attack pay-per-view, the NWA will resume a full schedule of NWA Power events on Tuesdays at 6:05 Eastern, beginning on March 23rd, available via a low-cost subscription bundle. NWA World's Heavyweight Champion Nick Aldis had this to say on the announcement. I'm incredibly proud of this new deal between the NWA and FITE. From the beginning of the Lightning One era of the NWA, FITE has been great pay-per-view partners for the NWA, and with the incredible growth that they have experienced in the last couple of years, it's very exciting to enter into a streaming agreement with FITE for our flagship show, NWA Power. Streaming is the future, and we're proud to be with a leader in the field of sports entertainment. Just real quick as a side note, did you notice he said our flagship show, NWA Power? No mention of Circle Squared, no mention of 10 Pounds of Gold, no mention of NWA Shockwave, and no mention of Carneyland. NWA star Thunder Rosa offered her thoughts. I'm very excited that we have partnered up with FITE. Lamira Amira is ready to bring the heat to NWA and to show why I am one of the best wrestlers in the world today. That's pretty exciting. I just keep going back to it, guys. As someone who has been a champion, a cheerleader for the NWA, if you will, I've pushed the narrative that they were not going to disappear, that they were not going to fade quietly into the night. That it's something that I've said since day one, that Billy Corgan was not closing up shop, that Billy Corgan was not selling the NWA. And it feels good to be vindicated, because everything that we said here at the Alliance blog, everything that they said at This Is the Pro Wrestling Podcast, the folks over at Putting You Over, we all have been saying similar things, that the NWA wasn't going anywhere. And it's, like I said, it's very fulfilling to see that the National Wrestling Alliance has come back. I mean, of course, not yet, but March 21st. I found this on the Seattle Times, which is interesting because the Seattle Times is nowhere near Atlanta, nowhere near Chicago, Illinois, but they covered the Smashing Pumpkins and literally said the Smashing Pumpkins Corgan wrestles with keeping the NWA afloat. There was an article that was done by the Associated Press that basically acknowledges the Billy Corgan and his ownership of the NWA, and brought to the point that, again, they're trying to get back on to promoting these events. I just think it's very interesting that all this kind of comes, again, on the heels of them removing all the content from YouTube. And of course, I mean, the unfortunate passing of Josephus has been very difficult for everyone. And I'm sure the NWA fam, not just the wrestling fans, but the community that's involved with NWA Power, is also hurting from the loss of Josephus. So I'm sure a lot of folks are feeling very vindicated right now that the NWA is coming back, and I would imagine that they'll, honor Josephus on their first tapings. That remains to be seen. The things that we do kind of have to acknowledge, though, is that roster is going to look significantly different, right? Because, we can list the whole litany of characters who are no longer associated with the NWA, most notably LA Knight, Eli Drake. James Storm is back with Impact, or maybe he's just working without a contract. We don't really know. Ricky Starks is with AEW. So with all of this news coming out, again, a couple of things that we have to acknowledge is that, the NWA was kind of put in a weird situation with COVID-19. Of course, there's a lot of factors that happened in 2020 that made these things very muddy waters to navigate. First, the global pandemic is enough reason for most wrestling promotions to stop. They had a huge turnover in terms of roster, folks signing with Impact, folks signing with AEW, folks even signing with NXT. They lost their color commentator to the NXT. They lost LA Knight to NXT. AEW gained athletes like Eddie Kingston, Ricky Starks. And then sometimes some of it was just contracts being allowed to expire, like Marty Bell, Allison Kay, Zicky Dice. All these talents are still out there. Now, like Zicky Dice, I don't imagine we'll be back with the NWA, but I don't see any obstacle preventing Marty Bell or Allison Kay from returning to the NWA. And so it'll be very interesting to see what happens. Even the nice thing about the cooperation they had with Primetime Live was that they were able to end the stories for several feuds. So, we got closure on Zicky Dice being television champion. Elijah Burke is finally put in place. You have a TV champion, fresh for storylines. There's no connection to Ricky Starks. There's no connection any further to Zicky Dice. He is free to do something new, something different. Trevor Murdoch wrapped up his feud with Aaron Stevens by winning the NWA National title, a title he defended actually this past weekend at Southwestern Wrestling Entertainment, where he defended against a former NWA Central States champion, Jeremy Wyatt. That was a really fun show. You guys should check out SWE Fury if you love what the NWA is, what the NWA used to be. SWE Fury might be right up your wheelhouse. Serena Deep is kind of where she hasn't even had a chance to defend her World Women's Championship in the NWA. She defeated Thunder Rosa on Primetime Live. She has defended that title in All Elite Wrestling, but has yet to actually step into the Georgia Public Broadcasting Studios. She hasn't been a part of Power yet. And so that'll be exciting to see how that plays out for her. Of course, you got a hungry Thunder Rosa. Thunder Rosa wants that title back. And of course, you have the 10 pounds of gold, Nick Aldis, who's continuing his legacy, his dynasty. We said this on the Alliance Blog podcast just a few days ago, that nobody more than Nick Aldis needs NWA Power to return. He needs it. It will establish his identity going forward. It cements his legacy. Everything's coming together. So, one thing is for certain. The NWA cannot rest on laurels. The NWA can't rest on what it was in 2019 or even what it was supposed to be in 2020. They really are going to have to step that up. If you're asking your audience to pay more for a product that was free, then you're going to have to step it up. Step it up.
Thanks again for tuning in to the Alliance Blog Podcast, a presentation of alliance-wrestling.com. We genuinely appreciate your support. Would you consider subscribing so you won't miss any future episodes? We'd also like to remind you that we do a live stream every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific on YouTube at the Alliance Blog. And you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Tumblr, TikTok, and Twitch at the Alliance Blog. Remember, absorb what is useful, reject what is useless, add what is essentially your own. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.